If you're watching this because you purchased one of my kits, I just want to start off by saying thank you so much. And if you just stumbled upon this video, hello, my name is Elizabeth and I teach people how to embroider. All right, let's get to stitching. I'm so excited about this one. I love this hoop so much and I'm so excited to share it with you. All right, so grab your hoop, your fabric, and then your stick and stitch design. Then we're gonna peel our stick and stitch design off the backing just like we would a sticker. Center your sticker as best as you can in the hoop and then go ahead and stick it to the fabric. And please do not stress about this. Nothing is perfectly centered, so just get it as close as you can. Now that you've got your sticker on the fabric, go ahead and apply some pressure all around the sticker just to make sure it's secure. Now grab your hoop and place it face down on a hard surface. Now apply pressure to the back of the fabric like this. This will help your sticker stick to the fabric even more. Now grab your yellow thread because that's the one we'll be starting with. You can typically find the end piece of your thread at the very bottom of the bundle. Then you can just slowly pull it out till you're at your desired length. Don't go too fast or else it will knot up. The length of your thread is actually super important because if it's too long, it'll start knotting up a lot, which is really frustrating. The rule of thumb for measuring your thread is to fully extend your arm and measure the thread from your hand to your shoulder. Because so many people ask, this ends up being about 22 inches for me. For this entire project, we'll be using 3 strands of thread, and each bundle has 6 strands. To separate your thread, lightly tap at the very end like this. By doing this, the strands will start to separate on their own. With one hand, lightly pinch the very end of your thread like this. Now with your other hand, grab one single strand of thread and slowly pull it out of the bundle. Do that 2 more times and then you'll have your 3 strands of embroidery thread. Now grab your needle and your needle threader. Insert the metal part of your needle threader into the eye of your needle like this. Pinch the eye of your needle with your threader still inserted. With your other hand, grab the thread and pull it through the metal part of your threader. Now just pull the threader through the eye of your needle. When stitching, I typically leave about 4 to 5 inches of thread overlapping like this. This keeps the thread from falling out of my needle while I'm stitching. Now to make sure my stitches are secure, I'm just going to tie a single knot at the very end of my thread. The final thing you need to know is how to tie off your thread in the back of your hoop. There are so many different methods, but this is what I do. I'm going to insert my needle under a previous stitch I made and then pull my needle all the way through. Once I get to about here, I'll insert my needle into the loop and pull it all the way through, creating a knot. I'll typically do this twice just to be extra secure, so 2 knots total. Okay, now finally on to the fun part. The dark gray lines are the outline of the pattern and the light gray lines are guidelines that I created to help you know what direction to make your stitches in. I know it looks like there's a lot going on, but the guidelines make things so much easier. We're gonna start by filling in this small little section right here with our yellow thread. Now insert your needle at the bottom center of our wonky little oval and pull your needle all the way through. Following the guideline, insert your needle back into the fabric in the middle of the guideline and then pull it all of the way through. Now pull your needle through the back of the fabric directly next to the first stitch that we created. Lots of times people ask if they need to pull it through the same exact hole as the first stitch, but the answer is no. We're going to create a new hole, but we're just trying to get it as close as we can next to it. Sometimes when you're stitching, the tail of your thread might come through the front while you're pulling your thread through. To easily fix this, just flip your hoop over and pinch and kind of pull at the tail until you're able to pull it through the back. All right, back to business. Insert your needle directly next to the end of the previous stitch you made and then pull it all the way through the back of the fabric. Repeat that same step on the opposite side of the shape. Now I'm gonna make another smaller stitch to maintain the shape of our wonky oval here. So when I insert my needle back into the fabric, I'm just gonna make it a little lower than our previous stitches so it won't be quite as long. Throughout this project, do not feel pressured to use the exact amount of stitches I am. Our goal is to fill in the objects with thread. So if the shape needs more thread, add more, and if you see me adding extra stitches but yours is already filled in, then you can just leave it. I look at embroidery like paint by numbers. Thread is our paint and the needle is our brush. Some people have to use more brush strokes to fill in an area and others less. It's unique to every individual, so I just don't want you to worry about that. Now it's time to split our stitches. Split the middle stitch you made with your needle and pull it all the way through. I typically like to start in the center of my objects and then work my way out. Then insert your needle back into the fabric at the top of the guideline. Now just repeat those steps until the object is filled in. For this little section, I'm just going to do the same thing I did on the opposite side, which is just make one single straight stitch. So I'm not going to split a stitch just in this little section. Once again, this will just help us maintain the shape of the object. My section needs another stitch at the top, so I'm going to create one more split stitch right up there. And ta-da! Just like that, our very first section is complete. Now let's move on to the second section. I want to show you one more way to do the split stitch so you can see which method you like more. The finished results are the same, the method is just a little different. Pull your needle through the back of the fabric at the bottom of the object where our guideline is, just like we did with the first shape we filled in. Following the guideline, insert your needle back into the fabric in the middle of the shape again, and then pull your needle all the way through. The only thing different we're doing here is we're going to go ahead and split the stitch now instead of later. Once your center stitch is split, go ahead and insert your needle back into the fabric at the very end of your object following the guideline. So, you know, same old thing we've been doing. I prefer this way, but some people prefer the other way, so like I said, I just like showing different options so you can pick which way works best for you. I'm going to continue filling in the object by working my way down. This little section at the very bottom is so small that I'm not going to do a split stitch here, I'm just going to do a single stitch. If you want to add in a split stitch there, you definitely can, it's up to you. I'm just letting you know I just put a single stitch in there. Now we can just fill in the remainder of the object using the same exact method we've been using. Once complete, repeat these steps on the other wing. Now it's time to switch to our orange thread. Begin at the top where the wing meets the moth's body. Using the split stitch, fill in the top section of the wing. For this next section, I'm going to alternate between using the split stitch and single stitches depending on the amount of space I have. If it's a smaller area, like between the yellow object and the moth's body, I'll use a single stitch. But if there's more space, like above, in between, and below the yellow sections, I'll use the split stitch. And while I'm stitching, I'm just trying to keep my stitches as close together as possible. We're just trying our best to completely fill in the area with our orange thread. When I'm thread painting like this, I don't super have a method to my madness. I fill a section in, and if I think it needs more, I add another stitch. That's one of the best parts about embroidery, in my opinion though, is you can't really mess it up. Once you're done filling this in, repeat the same steps on the opposite wing. With your pink thread, go ahead and start filling in this next section here. Continue using the same split stitch method that we have been using. Once that section is complete, go ahead and move on to the next pink section on the same wing. And then once this section is complete, go ahead and repeat the same exact steps on the opposite wing. With your blue thread, fill in this middle section with the same split stitch method until it is filled in. And of course, once this section is complete, repeat the same steps on the opposite wing. We're going to continue using our blue thread for this next section here. Pull your needle through the back of the fabric at the top center of the section. Now insert your needle into the little circle that I made as a guideline and then pull it all the way through. Also, I just wanted to let you know real quick that you're doing a great job. Now pull your needle through the back of the fabric at the top section right here. You're basically just following the outline of the wing. So insert your needle back into the fabric at the top of the wing, making it the same length as your previous stitch. Then repeat that same step on the opposite side of the section. Now pull your needle through the top of the section between the middle stitch and the stitch we just made. Insert your needle back into the fabric in between those same two stitches at the very bottom. Now pull your needle through the back of the fabric in between the very bottom stitch and the stitch we just created. I'm going to make this stitch a little bit smaller than the other ones we've made. As you can see, the top part of the section is wider than the middle section. So the middle portion is already full, whereas the top portion still needs some thread. So there's no need to make the stitches all the way back at the bottom again. So now I'm just going to complete these same exact steps until the top portion of the section is filled in. I counted 9 stitches total for the top portion of this section, but once again, if you have more or less than that, that's totally okay. As long as that section is filled with thread, that's all that matters. Now that the top portion is filled in, let's move on to part 2. Starting at the center, pull your needle through the back of the fabric, making sure you're splitting your previous stitches like we've been doing. Insert your needle back into the fabric at the very bottom center of the section, then pull it all the way through. Now we're going to create one more split stitch directly next to the one that we just made. Once again, we can see that the middle of our section is larger than the bottom of the section. Because of that, I am going to split the stitch again. However, I'm going to insert my needle about 3/4 of the way down because the very bottom of the section is already full. Then we'll go ahead and repeat these steps until the section is filled in. For the top part, I only needed to add another 2 additional split stitches. But once again, it could be more for you or it could be less. Since we're already using our blue thread, let's go ahead and fill in this next section here. We'll use the same method that we've been using this entire time, starting at the very center of the object with a split stitch and then working our way out until the desired area is filled in. Remember, if the section starts getting too small for a split stitch, go ahead and fill in that portion with just some single stitches or a single stitch, whatever is necessary. Now we'll move on to the next section with our yellow thread. We'll repeat the same steps for this section as the top blue section above it. Now we'll move on to the next yellow section, repeating our same split and single stitch method until the area is completely filled in. Now we will of course move on to the next section with our pink thread. Once again, repeat the same steps for this section as the top yellow section above it. And then, you guessed it, repeat those same exact steps again for this next pink section until the desired area is filled in. For this next part, we'll be using our orange thread. In this section, we'll only be using the satin stitch. For me personally, when I'm filling in larger areas with the satin stitch, I like to break it into little sections. I notice this makes it seem less overwhelming for me and it helps me keep my stitches straight. So I look at each new guideline as a new little section for me to fill in. It's also nice having those guidelines there because I feel like it kind of automatically helps me keep my stitches even straighter. It might be a placebo effect, I have no idea, but it helps me one way or another. So just continue filling in this area with the satin stitch until it's complete. With our blue thread, we'll fill in the final part of our top left wing. And we're just using the satin stitch again here, so we're doing the same exact method that we just did for the orange portion. Once this area is completely filled in, repeat these same steps until the top right wing is complete. You guys, she is looking so good. Using orange thread and the satin stitch, we're going to fill in this next section here. I would recommend outlining the guidelines I created before filling in the entire area. Our stitches are going to be somewhat diagonal here because we're stitching with the curves of the shape, and guidelines make this so much easier to do. Because breaking the shape down into little sections will help us maintain the shape of the object and our diagonal stitches. Since we're already using our orange thread, let's go ahead and fill in these circles using the satin stitch. Start by outlining our guidelines and then filling in the remainder of the area.
She calls me day and night. I'm sorry, girl, you just don't make me feel right. I never meant to make you cry, you were right. Just leave me be, I'm not gonna put up a fight. And every time
Fill in this next section using your pink thread and the satin stitch. This area is pretty small, so that's why I decided to just use the satin stitch here. Although, if you prefer how the split stitch looks, please use that instead. This is just what I decided to do for this section, but I want you to know that if you feel like something else would look better or you prefer something else, then go for it, use it. I'm just here to provide you with the tools and how I do things, but I want you to feel free to explore and try new things if you're comfortable with that. Moving on to this next section, we're going to continue using our pink thread. Now this section is a little larger, so I'm going to alternate using the split stitch in the larger areas and the satin stitch in the smaller areas. And of course, I'm continuing to use my guidelines to help me know what direction I need to stitch in. For the center section here, I'm going to fill it in using the yellow thread and the satin stitch. I sound like a broken record, but as always, I'm just going to continue using the guidelines as, well, a guide. I don't know what was going on with this section, but my thread kept knotting up a lot. But I wanted to leave that in here so you guys could see it is normal for your thread to knot up. It can be super annoying, but unfortunately it is very normal. For this bottom section, we're going to use our blue thread and fill the area in using the satin stitch. Once again, we're going to start by stitching the outlines and then filling it in one section at a time. Also, you don't have to watch me stitch this entire section if you don't want to. I am a very visual learner, so I wanted to include me stitching the entire area because I know that can be really helpful for some of us. But if you got it down and don't need to watch me, you can go ahead and skip to the next part. Also, I'm laughing because I've noticed I keep peeping my head in this so you can see like my hair in some sections. Sometimes I totally forget what I'm recording and I need to get my head away from the camera lens, so I apologize about that. And once you are done with this wing, go ahead and repeat the same exact steps to the opposite wing. I can't believe we're so close to being finished. She looks so good. For this next section, we'll use our yellow thread and the satin stitch. As always, start by stitching the guidelines first and then filling in the remainder of the area. I was clearly super zoned in on stitching at this point because you can really see my frizzy bangs a lot in this clip. The reason we're starting at the bottom of the body and then working our way up is because this helps with the dimensions. By doing this, the bottom portion of the moth's body will look farther away and the top portion will look much closer. This is also why we're stitching the body last. The wings are big and beautiful and already grab the majority of our focus, so I wanted to make sure the body of the moth had some attention as well. Now we'll move on to the next portion with our orange thread. We're going to fill this in just like the last section, but when we insert our needle back into the fabric at the top of the yellow thread, we want to make sure that we split the yellow stitches. I'm also varying the stitches so slightly in length. I'm doing this because I don't want them to look perfectly uniform. By slightly varying the stitch lengths, it makes the moth's body look a little fuzzy, which just adds more texture, which is chef's kiss. Repeat these same exact steps on the next two sections, alternating with our yellow and our orange thread. Now that those sections are complete, we're going to fill in the moth's head using our orange thread and the satin stitch. Now onto the body, which is my favorite part to stitch because it's kind of chaotic and I love that. I'm going to start by making one single stitch. I'm going to pull my needle through the back of the fabric slightly above the center. Then I'm going to insert my needle back into the fabric at the very center. I'm going to do the same exact thing and continue working my way around in a circle. When you're doing this, you can insert your needle back into the same hole in the very center, but if that starts to get too difficult because of all the thread in that same area, just insert your needle close to it. Remember, it does not need to be perfect. For this first round, I ended up making 8 single stitches, but yours could be more or less. It's not a big deal. Don't stress about that. Once I'm done with the first round, I'm going to pull my needle through the back of the fabric slightly above the center of 2 of my previous stitches. Then I'm going to insert my needle back into the fabric in between those 2 stitches. Then I'm just going to continue working my way around, repeating those steps. We're basically just chaotically filling this area in with a bunch of single stitches. Once we start to reach the edge of the circle, we want to split the stitches on the wings, the head, and the bottom portion of the body. And once again, we're going to vary the length in stitches just a little bit just to create that fuzzy effect. And I'm seriously just going ham right now. I'm just putting stitches where I think it needs to be filled in. And I'm going to leave some small sections open here because we're going to come back in with our pink thread in a minute. And we're just adding highlights with the hot pink thread, so the main color is supposed to be yellow, but just adding a little bit of spice. Now we're going to go back through the area, highlighting it with our hot pink thread until we're happy with the amount of pink thread that we have. And for me, I love this thread color, so I used quite a bit, but do what makes you happy. And yeah, I'm sure by now you've gotten used to seeing my frizzy hair. Moving on to the antennas, we're going to begin by filling in the center of the antenna with the back stitch and our hot pink thread. Now that the center is filled in, we're going to fill in the fuzzy parts with single stitches. I recommend starting the stitches at the very top of the fuzz and then inserting your needle back in where we did our back stitch. Once this antenna is complete, go ahead and repeat the same steps on the other antenna. We are almost done with our stitching. We're going to continue using our hot pink thread. Starting with the biggest star, we're going to create a back stitch with just 2 stitches at the very center. This is the only star that we'll use a back stitch on. And for the remainder of the stars, we'll just use single stitches. They're going to overlap in the center, and that's exactly what we want. I just want to say I'm so proud of you for finishing your hoop. Now we get to rinse our sticker off and watch our stitches come to life. Now this is very important. We want to use lukewarm water when rinsing off our sticker. If the water is too hot, it can cause the dye in our thread to release and stain the fabric. We don't want the water to be freezing cold because then it'll take forever for the sticker to dissolve, so just make sure it's lukewarm. And I have my little helper in here, Mr. Peppy. He is obsessed with water, so he's always here when I'm rinsing off my stickers. You're going to be able to see your pink thread through the white fabric, but don't worry, once it dries, you're not going to be able to see it. We're just going to continue rinsing off the sticker until it completely dissolves. Sometimes I'll flip my hoop around too and rinse the back of the fabric. I feel like this helps the sticker dissolve even faster. Peppy is going to do a quick inspection here to see if it's ready. He's looking all around just to make sure there's no more sticker. Oh, there we go. He's letting me know we are good to go. If you don't have a little helper, I'm really sorry. Just make sure the sticker is completely gone. Now just set your hoop aside and wait for it to dry. Now that our fabric is dry, it's time to back our hoop. Start by grabbing any color of thread you'd like to use. I'm gonna add a triple knot, roughly like 5 inches above the very end of the thread. Start by placing your embroidery hoop face down. Now insert your needle into the fabric near the top of your hoop. Pull your needle all the way through the fabric until it reaches that triple knot that we made. Insert your needle into the front of the fabric about a ½ inch away from our last stitch. It doesn't need to be exact, that's just a very rough estimate. All we're doing here is weaving our needle in and out of the front and back of our fabric. So just repeat those same steps all the way around the hoop until we reach the first stitch that we made. Once we reach the top, we want to make sure that the last stitch we make is from the front of the fabric to the back of the fabric. So the last stitch will be facing you. Now unthread your needle so you don't accidentally stab yourself. Grab the end of your thread without the knot. Place your fingers on the center of your hoop to keep it secure, and then pull the thread to cinch your fabric. How satisfying is that? Now you can grab both ends of your thread and tie a triple knot to keep the backing secure. If the end of your thread without a knot on it is too long, go ahead and trim it. And just like that, you've created your own Madam Moth. I am so proud of you. I hope you loved stitching this hoop as much as I did. Thank you again for purchasing this kit for me. It really means so much. If you feel comfortable, I would absolutely love to see your finished piece. You can email me a picture or tag me on Instagram, whatever works for you. Thanks again, friend. I'll see you next time.